I mean, it's censored in Facebook. Like you can't, like it was strongly, but let's talk about censorship for a minute, because like I'm sort of a microcosm of a macrocosm of a lot of censorship that's happening on a huge level, on a global level, and mostly with the Western hemisphere to protect the Western hemigy, and to protect that narrative that they want this proxy war, right?
Mhm.
Um, the US against Russia using Ukraine. So tell me, have you been deplatformed or demonetized like some of the other like gray zone, like like so many journalists, like off the top of my head, there's like 10 or 12.
Mhm.
Jackson Hinkle's another one that's being censored, deplatformed, banned. Has that happened to Convo Couch at all, or you,
Oh
or
yeah, yeah.
anything?
We've been deplatformed. We've been demonetized on YouTube, and it was all in the same day. It was the day after AOC had wrote her letter to tell people to
Ah,
report them, to bully them. The very next day, the Convo Couch, Mikasa Sukasa, my brother Nico House, who I love so much, Frank
mm-hmm,
Analysis, um, actually, what's his name? Graham Elwood, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And a couple other people. I can't remember the other two. And I think they let the other two back. We're all demonetized on the same day at the same time, taken down. So now it's 20 plus months. Jackson Hinkle's just started going through this. We've been going through this for a while. Now, for us, it's a little interesting, Tara, because for us, the Convo Couch, it was because of elections. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Leftist, based leftists, common sense leftists, whatever you want to call us today, because I know we're going to talk about how crappy the leftists in America are. They're not even
Yes.
left.
Mm-hmm.
uh, talking about elections and talking about the framework. And we've created our own lane. That another
Mm-hmm.
part of the whole Convo Couch 5-year story is the fact that we own this lane where we go to international countries and observe elections and come back and speak about them. On those elections observing are mostly anti-imperialists, which are cool. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the socioeconomic disasters of their country, the indigenous people who are suffering, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't look and scrutinize the elections like we do. The
Right.
Convo Couch showed up. There was a small group of the people who did, like Terry Matson from Code Pink. And we
Mm-hmm.
really own this lane of going out there and showing people, hey, man, one of the biggest scams we have. Oh, I can't. We're on YouTube. I got to talk. I'll stop. We
No,
talk
that's
about
cool. No,
elections.
no, no. You can, you go ahead. They don't, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm on Rockfin and Rumble. So we're on
Okay.
a bunch of different.
So
So if
my
YouTube
bad.
goes down, whatever. I'm not even
Yeah.
monetized. So whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Go
yeah,
ahead.
but we
Yeah.
go and talk about elections, and we tell people like, the
Mm-hmm.
elections here in the United States, this is ridiculous. Weeks of voting, which you think might be like
Mm-hmm.
more accessible, but it's more ways to cheat an election. You can't do that. There's no
Right.
security in elections. There's no chain of custody. You don't know where these ballots are coming from, where they're being printed from. The whole system is FUBAR. And to be honest with you, if you allow this system to go, progressives, it's going to screw you more. Can't you already see it screwed Bernie twice? Like we can mathematically show you where Bernie got screwed, and yet
Mm-hmm.
you want to still go along with this. This is for our benefits. If we want the grassroots to ever succeed, and we see this in other countries, Tara, when we go to
Right.
Colombia and Nicaragua and Honduras, the number one issue is national sovereignty. Those
Right.
people want the right to choose what they want to do in their own country without the West boot on their neck. That's the number one
Exactly.
issue. And the number one way to achieve national sovereignty is through free, fair, clear, and transparent elections. And it can be done because we see it done on one day with results that night, expedient as can be, in all these third world countries.
And you actually were in mainstream media when you went to Nicaragua. Remember, I read an article and it wasn't unfavorable. They like talked about, it was actually like it just kind of covered that you went there and what you, it could have been better, but but I was reading some of, so you got known for that, for going and doing that, boots on the ground.
Yeah, yeah. Vince Business Insider. Yeah, they weren't totally fair. They were a little
No,
slighted. A
it
different
wasn't like a
article.
hit piece, but it was like Business Insider's tricky. They've done hit pieces on me or not
Yeah.
so hit pieces, and then they've done some actually good pieces on me. So it really depends on the journalist that's working on it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember that interview, and that did kind of spawn us off. Of course, Fiorella, who has just got such a powerhouse, like 80,000 followers on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
She's just a huge megaphone for it, and it's amazing too. She went to Peru by herself to
Right.
go cover that election because that's where she's originally from. But
Right. Mm-hmm.
and then Johnny Tsunami, who did this amazing work on the California elections, just exposing so much stuff, was
Mm-hmm.
Johnny on the spot, literally. with his
Yeah.
camera, catching people, transporting what looked to be ballots by themselves. You know what I'm saying? He was just everywhere. So, I have an amazing team when it comes to that. And yeah, and I'm glad we own that late. To me, like I said, the best way for a country to
Hmm.
obtain national sovereignty, and that's here too, is through fair elections. That's the way to turn these things.
Yeah, and the sideways way they were coming at you in that article was they were asking you who paid you and all that other stuff, and it wasn't relevant. You paid your own plane ticket, and that's
Yeah.
not relevant. You were trying to go there and observe, and you notice they don't do that with other journalists that go and try to objectively cover elections, right? They don't ask them who's paying them or
Yeah,
like
no
how they're
shit.
doing. Yeah, they don't do that, do they?
Yeah, no, not at all. But that was the thing.
Mhm.
I mean, but see, that's the thing. When it comes
Mhm.
to the situation of trying to compare that country, Nicaragua's election,
Mhm.
especially when it's a government that doesn't like Daniel Ortega, when it's a
Right.
Congress that just does not like him, where they're gonna, the Rensenera Act, right? I mean, it's out
Mhm.
there. This is
Right.
sanctions. This is cutting off. This is blockades. So of course they're going to go after and try to get a hit piece. And if that's your only angle, man, well,
Yeah.
who paid for your flight? And
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God, they got me. They paid me off with those Nicaraguan lunches. Oh, you got me. Like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was transparent. Like if you're critically reading some of these articles, it's transparent now how they try to angle in the hits, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing too,
So
Tara. When you go there, I
mm,
just want to say, when you go there and
yep.
you get in a room with these election officials, they
Hmm.
sit there and we call ourselves election scrutinizers. We
Right.
scrutinize it and they answer all the questions. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to tell you about that.
No, no, it's really fascinating. Keep going with that. What was it compared to US elections? What was your biggest takeaway from all of those travels and that experience as
Well,
you look back now?
the US, and I can speak the last time we had the general election, I was in California. So that's where I concentrated a lot of my efforts when it came to the elections. I did go to New Hampshire.
Hmm.
Fiorella did go to Vegas. I
Hmm.
did go to Florida. We did go to different areas to make sure we actually covered those were the primaries. We covered the general election. We were actually here in Vegas when we were still living in California, and we did a big
Hmm.
special on it. But my experience is when you're running around, especially in LA, and I'm trying to get answers, you don't always get the answers. You get a lot of times, we'll get back to you. Let me give you my card.
Hmm.
Jeff Klein, who was Dean Logan's assistant, and he ran the LA office, came out to a Bernie Sanders group to answer
Hmm.
questions. And he was able to answer a lot of the softball questions that were coming in the beginning. But then we got to the segment where Fiorella and I got to ask questions, and we didn't get answers. Like, for instance, you're out there, Mr. Klein, your office is saying that we have an open source system for our
Hmm.
counting machines, our tabulation machines. He goes, yes, we have an open source system. Great. Where's the code? Well,
Right.
we don't have the code. What do you mean? You just said it was open source. Yeah, but we don't have the code. Let me give you my business card and I'll get back to you right now. Okay. All right. How many people transport the ballots when they get picked up from the mail room? How does that work? Who hires that staff? Can you tell me the process? I don't have
Hmm.
the answers for you. Here's my card. Let me get back to you. Right. And we would
Right.
all the time, and we would try to catch them. Like, you just said it's an open source system, but you're not giving anybody the source code. And still to this day in this election, they aren't giving anybody the source code, but yet they're still claiming it's an open source system. They're just not sharing the code. That's an oxymoron. But when you
Right.
go to Nicaragua, every single question, boom, answer, boom, answer.
Hmm.
Fee, and that was a whole thing too, as well. They were like, well, who translated for you when you went to Nicaragua? I'm like,
Oh.
my Latin business partner over here, Fiorella, she was born in Peru. Would you like to hear her speak Spanish? Oh, no, no, no. You know what I'm saying? So when I'm in those rooms, that's another thing too, as well. And in Honduras, I mean, we
Hmm.
have these amazing moments, where
Hmm.
after the press conferences, and that's something we did in Nicaragua. We actually joined the government. We were there on the behest of the government with all the international observers. So they
Hmm.
had a press conference at the end. When we went to Honduras, the only way we were able to catch a ride, thanks to Max Blumenthal and Wyatt Reade, those people out there.
Yes, Wyatt Reade. Yeah,
Wyatt Reade is my
fantastic.
boy. I
Yeah.
love you, Wyatt. Um,
Yes, I love him too. He was just on the show. Yeah, and I'd love
he's
to have
amazing.
Max. He's great. Yeah.
Yeah. We were able to go with the Libre party. So when the Libre party was done on election day, they kind of scattered on out. We threw our own press conference ourselves. We put it together, and so many channels showed up, local news showed up. It was amazing and stuff. And we have these moments where Fiorella will translate for me for the interviews, and they always want to talk to the white guy in those countries. Like, let's talk to the white guy here about these. They want to get my perspective on what I saw. So we have these amazing moments. And when we have in every single situation, whether it be Peru, Honduras, Nicaragua, Colombia, we have these moments before the elections where we get to go see these election officials. We have our credentials and we get to ask them everything. And sometimes we get other people in the room who are with us angry, like in Nicaragua. I was asking so many questions. One of the other observers, like, can you stop asking questions? I want to go eat dinner. And I'm like, no, I got about 5 or 6 questions more. But we really scrutinize. And here's the thing. They've been working on these elections for so long that they're ready. And the public is engaged. They are so engaged because we don't just talk to the people in the elections, Tara. We talk to waiters, taxi drivers. We go into the malls. We go out. We talk to the people and we ask them their opinions too as well. They are engaged. They are knowledgeable. We need to get there in this country. And also participation rate is through the roof in these countries. We need to do that back here in the States.
Well, I mean, I've talked to people who have kind of are fed up and they're like done with electoral, they just feel like it's rigged and it's not to be fixed in any time soon. So it's kind of refreshing to hear a different take that, yeah, that's the most important thing to focus on and to make it right. So coming to that point, I wanted to ask you 2 things. How do you feel about the upcoming November midterms that are coming and all of that? And but this is the first part of the question I want to ask you, to go back to earlier when you talked about the squad. When did you realize that AOC wasn't for real and the squad was just a PR scam, basically? When did it hit? And that, I mean, I'm kind of setting this up like I'm giving my opinion, but when did you kind of break away from the squad thinking that they were actually an answer to a question for US?
So which one do you want me to answer first? This election?
The first one, the squad.
All right. Okay. So this election, I'm still nervous because we're still in a bad spot overall when it comes to elections. Yes. I mean, what the Biden administration is trying to do with some of these new laws coming out in Georgia. I don't know if you know what happened, Tara, but they took away the All-Star game from Georgia because of the election law they passed in the state. They literally took away the All-Star game, the baseball All-Star game, which is, Atlanta. There's a lot of poor people there. There's a lot of middle-class businesses struggling. They would have made so much money if the All-Star game comes to town. I mean, literally 100,000 people there just to go watch that game and be in that area. You know what I'm saying? Just an influx of money in hotels, restaurants, the whole 9 yards. But he punished them, along with his little regime, and they moved the game to a more affluent area in Colorado. That's because Atlanta had changed these laws to make it harder to cheat, not harder to vote. The moves they have, the pushback against elections is really just they're kind of tickling the heart. And since we're going to talk about the squad, this is kind of crazy too as well. The same people who follow the squad, they're tickling the heart and the compassion emotion of the progressives saying, hey man, they're making it harder to vote. They're making it this is a racist thing. They're making it harder for people of color to vote. This is ridiculous. They're not letting them have water, any of this stuff. I mean, they're really muddying the waters. The truth of the matter is this affects the grassroots people more than anything, these laws and stuff. They're not making it harder to vote. They're making it harder to cheat. And when it comes to an ID, for instance, this whole thing where the left says, we can't have ID. It's racist to ask for ID. It's hard for some people to get an ID. Well, they should do what we ask these people in these other countries. Make it easier to get an ID. And that's what they did in Georgia with this law. They made it easier to get an ID. Yeah. I'm sorry, but the only way we can have a secure election if people show up at their designated location with an ID to vote, and it's expedient, and there's public counting. That's the way it's got to be done. I understand people think it's bad when you ask for ID, but it's not the truth. If they do it in a third world country, and that's the thing, in these countries, which they're way more leftist, they push for more identification laws. They even have a thumbprint identifications from like diagnostics machines. They come in there because they know that it's harder to cheat if they can't create votes out of nowhere. That's the ruling class. So that's why they're so hard and they push for these identification laws. In fact, in Nicaragua and Honduras, they mark your finger in black ink after you're done voting, so you can only vote once. No drop boxes, no mail-in voting. If you're elder and you're handicapped, you can cut the line. I've seen pictures of them carrying a wheelchair upstairs for a lady to vote. They take their voting serious over there. And I am still concerned about the election coming up because things are just as bad Ballot harvesting is still legal in half the states. There's still drop boxes out in the middle of nowhere. They're still sending out ballots to everybody in the mail-in rolls. With those rolls haven't been cleaned. People move, they leave them on there. It's really, really bad. So there's no chain of custody in our elections. In fact, it's worse. Some states have tightened it up, and they're looking for it now. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not confident with this election, and I think people will pay more attention to 2024 because it's the big ticket. A lot of people tend to not only pay attention.
Yeah, they tend to ignore the midterms, but this midterm's big. It's an important one. It will decide whether the House and the Senate turn over, right?
Yeah. Well, they're the same party to me, no matter what.
No, they're the same party, but for me, Pasta, you know what? If the Republicans get in, what's going to happen with Biden, right? The first thing they're going to do, they're already talking about it. I think it was in the Hill today. They want congressional hearings, and that means an investigation. And I have been saying since day one, if they subpoena me, I will testify. So they need to, it takes one member of Congress to open that investigation.
Yeah, but I wouldn't count on that. Yeah. I wish, listen, I hope that happens. Really, to tell you, I hope that happens. But I'm just fearful, Tara, that they'll do what he did. That one hand will wash the other. We saw what Joe Biden did.
That they won't do an investigation. They won't do an impeachment. They'll just back off and do whatever. Is that what you're saying?
They won't. They're in cahoots with each other. So you know what I'm saying? McCarthy won't do what he needs to do. He won't call you. He'll make sure they deal with me. It wasn't Anita Hill. It was what's her name? With Clarence Thomas, who Biden, gave the softball, helped out his buddies, and what Clarence Thomas got in. So I mean,
with Anita Hill, with Blasey Ford, that was a different thing.
Completely different, completely different. Nobody can corroborate her story. Nobody can say that, she didn't know where she was and stuff. This is like, for you, it was totally different. You know exactly where you were, the time you were there. They can put you there. They have to look into it. I mean, that's just basic friggin'
There's a report I made to the Senate. I mean, there were witnesses, and not only that, but there were witnesses in the office. So it's one thing to do a media hit, but if you put those people under oath and they're faced with a felony, they're going to break. They're going to tell the truth. They're going to say, okay, this happened.